Hello, my name is Kerry Belba and I'm an executive board member of the British Medical Laser Association, and today I am interviewing Vasant Oswal, who is an ENT, an ear, nose and throat surgeon and a head and neck surgeon. So Vasant, lovely to have you here today at the conference. I know obviously as an executive board member yourself of the BMLA, you do attend every year. And this year is a very special year, isn't it? Because you're actually launching your autobiography, which encapsulates your very, I must say, varied career, which spans sort of decades, doesn't it, of both surgery, but also very specialism in laser treatments. So I just wanted to kind of sort of recap a little bit about your background and then ask you some questions, if I may. So obviously you spent 5 years in medical school, didn't you? And
Yes.
And you graduated at the age of 26?
Yes.
Yes. And then you married your beautiful wife, Namal, at the age of 28. And you actually married sort of into stardom, didn't you, at an early age? Because your father was a famous actor. Is that right?
Star.
A film star
Yeah.
in India. So can you tell me a little bit about sort of your early years in medical school?
Yes.
What it was like?
Yes. In 1955, when I entered medical school, the course was about 5 years. And after 5 years, you were a doctor. And there was no training like it is now for a couple of years. It's called a pre-registration training. It wasn't there. You passed your MBBS and then you're a doctor. Maybe your next patient has a tummy upset or maybe has a heart attack. So it really was that way, very difficult to start the practice unless you have some supervision, but there was nothing. So it was a long time ago. I passed in 1960. Penicillin was just coming in at that time. Would you believe? It's not long ago. So
Amazing.
it is sometime. That's what, 60 years ago.
So very varied, but no lasers at this point, critically.
Oh, what, you're talking about the laser. We used to do mastoid surgery. We actually used chisel and hammer, like a stonemason, to take the bone out. There was not even a drill. The dental drill is now there. There was no drill. We used to do chisel bone, and take the disease out.
So you really
Different
have
days.
seen such a
Different
progression
days.
through the ages. And of course, you did your masters, didn't you, between 1963 and 69? Yeah.
In 1963, I qualified in master surgery in ENT. So that's MS. And then in 1963, I had a letter from England to come to there to get a job in a hospital. And I said, okay, I want to study more because there was nothing more than MS in India. And there was FRCs here. And of course, FRCs was well respected at that time because Britishers had just left in 1947.
I see.
And FRCS was very much in vogue. And everybody wanted to go to England and get FRCS. So I said, I got a job offer. Go to England, get FRCS and go back. That's how I'm here.
That's how you meet. And you have a special link with Edinburgh, don't you, where we are today?
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about that?
About
Edinburgh, your link with Edinburgh.
Oh, you remind me now. After 1 year of house officer job in Middlesbrough, the next stop is to get registrar job. So I applied for a registrar job in Dundee, in Scotland, that's here. And I got the job. So I was in Scotland, in Dundee, as a registrar for 3 years. And then during my registrarship, I appeared for a FRCS examination in Edinburgh. And I passed it in 1967 here.
Amazing. It must be wonderful to come back to Edinburgh afterwards. So But of course, you were actually, shortly after, you were supposed to go home, but you actually applied for a job in Libya, didn't you? That didn't quite go to plan, did it?
Yes, that's quite a story. Uh, India was not so advanced it is now, and of course by that time we had an operating microscope, and I needed to buy a microscope, but the salaries of junior grades was not really enough to buy anything. So I thought I might go to Middle East because they wanted surgeon that time, and do 2 years there, get enough money, get instrument, go back. So I applied for a job in Libya, and I got the job in Libya. But
Almost.
no, I actually got an appointment letter, and I went to London to get a visa. I resigned my job in England. I went to London to the European embassy to get a visa. There was a Lieutenant Bobby, guarding the embassy, said, can't go in. I said, why not? He said, don't you know? I said, no, what? He said, there's been a coup last night. And no longer the King Idris is in power there. He's been deposed, and Colonel Gaddafi has taken over.
That's
So
right.
this is how I couldn't get the visa. So I came back and asked them, give me my job back. They said, we'll find another job for you. Your job is now being advertised. This is how I got another job as a local consultant for 6 months.
And you've had sort of quite a few highlights in your career, haven't you? So I know that you set up a head and neck clinic, and you actually won an award for that, didn't you, for best presentation? And you were actually treating cancer of the larynx, and that was I think you got the award in 1974. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes, when you go back, after 6 months of locum job, they said, have you thought about settling in this country, get a consultant job in this country? I said, never thought about it. Why don't you apply for a job? You'll get it, you'll do well. So I was appointed as a locum, as a consultant, full consultant, in North Riding Infirmary in Middlesbrough in 1970. And there I started developing this head and neck service, for the first in the country, I think. Then came concept of laryngeal cancer, won me an award in Toronto as a best presentation. And then I established Cleveland Laryngectomy Club as well. So that was the starting point of my career.
Of your career. And there's another quite significant moment in your career, isn't there, where you dissected the temporal bones, which can be seen actually in the College of Surgeons Museum. Have you ever been back to see them?
Oh, yes, yes. Ear anatomy is complicated, and it's in a hole, in a dark cavity. And an operating microscope, you can't really teach people because only surgeon can look down. One more surgeon can look down. So I decided to dissect the temporal bone and the anatomy of the ear and color it with different colors so that can identify red is incus, blue is malleus, and that kind of thing. And those temporal bone dissections were presented in a Wellcome Museum at Royal College of Surgeons of England. They liked it so much, they said, would we have them to put in museum? So they are now in museum, and generations of doctors, today's ENT surgeons, have learned ear surgery or ear anatomy from those bones.
From those actual bones being dissected. That is absolutely fantastic. I want to sort of shoot forward a little bit to your laser sort of part of your career, because obviously we are at the British Medical Laser Association conference, and a huge part of your autobiography is all about your specialism in laser treatments. So could you tell us a little bit about how you first got into laser?
I was, when one of the conference in USA, and I saw a prototype of laser. That was in 70s. It was about 10-foot long tube, and it was a ruby laser. And at the end of the tube, there was a laser spot. So this is a energized beam, which is so powerful. It's got more energy than the sun. So that was description. And then the next time, I got interested in laser at that time. And I said, let us keep that technology in mind. The next time I saw a laser machine was in Budapest in Hungary when I was there for World Congress. At that time, the size of the machine was like a washing machine size, and it was for clinical use, for surgical use.
So much smaller.
Yeah, much proper machine that you could take to theater and start working.
Yeah. And you started experimenting with lasers not on people, but on fruit.
Yes.
So,
When I got back, I asked the hospital, we want to buy the laser. For the department, nobody knew. Even the word, nobody knew the laser word. So I had to explain to them what it was. I said, how much does it cost? It's 40,000 pounds. That's in 1981. A lot of money.
£40,000.
40,000 pounds. They said, well, we don't have that kind of money. They didn't say that we don't have the money. It's not right for the government to say we don't have the money. So I said, we'll put it on a budget in the future. I said, I want laser now. So I decided to go for a public appeal. And within 4 months of public appeal, we had 40,000 pounds.
And this is in Cleveland.
40,000 pounds in Cleveland, northeast of England.
And that was a phenomenal amount of money back then.
I'll tell you what phenomenal amount of money is. In the pubs, there were collection boxes. We had to collect all those at the end of the week and bring them to count. It took 2 clerks to count all the coins. 3,000 pounds we collected in collection box, and they were deposited in the building society. That kind of money flew in. And as soon as we got 40,000 pounds, the laser was installed. The public appeal continued. It reached to 72,000 pounds in 6 months.
So what did you do with the rest of the funds?
Well, I bought accessories for the laser.
Because as we all know, lasers have consumables.
We bought the accessories, but video cameras were just coming in 1992. So we had a video camera, which was taking pictures all the time of the recording, and then I would go home and record, play back again, frame by frame. There are 25 frames in 1 second. So you know, 1/25th of action of a laser you could see. And when I saw the action of the laser, the important thing about the laser was not what you see, what it does in the depth of the tissue. That is how I needed to know the spread of the energy within the tissue.
That's right. Because you started off with lasering apples, then you went on to steak,
Yes.
but then of course with steak, you couldn't tell the depth of the penetration of the laser beam. So what did you do to get around that?
Well, this was the difficulty, You could see what's happening in the surface. But that's not important. The important thing is the heat dissipates within the tissue and causes damage. But you can't see, you can't tell the people. But that's the most important thing. So I thought about one day, why not use egg white? Egg white is a biological tissue. It's got protein. It's got water, and it is transparent.
So you can see.
So when you shoot, you see the charring, and then when the energy has been spent on the surface, the remaining energy causes clotting or coagulation, white of egg, like you make an omelette.
Absolutely.
And it caused a coagulation zone, which you could see because it's transparent.
Absolutely.
And then you could variation in exposure time and power and see how deep the coagulation is going. And that way, you could control the depth of destruction by studying the test will do the
And of
technique.
course, knowing the depth of destruction was absolutely critical, wasn't it? Because when you were treating
think you-
areas like the larynx,
You got to the crux of the matter.
you want to be able to destroy the tumour, but not
Absolutely
the
right.
voice box.
Let me explain. Vocal cords are fine, like I'm talking to you. If there is a nodule on a vocal cord, you remove the nodule with a laser. But while removing, some of the energy is bound to go into the vocal cord. And if that energy is strong enough, it will destroy part of the vocal cord. Then your voice again remains hoarse. So that critical point of dissipation of heat is on this structure larynx. You want to remove the tumor and cause as little damage to the vocal cord as possible. Now that's in the larynx. But in the tongue, for example, you got a cancer of the tongue. There, you take incision, it doesn't matter how much deep the energy spreads because that's what you want. You want to seal the blood vessels. We have to close the lymphatics so that it doesn't spread into the rest of the tumor. So in the tongue, we want deeper destruction. On the larynx, we don't want any destruction. So these are two diagonally opposite aims, which you could only study while working on the ego.
And of course, you've been absolutely instrumental in setting those parameters and discovering this in the first place. So as when you do treat the larynx, is there any kind of sort of issue with the vocal cords? Is there a little bit of change in someone's voice at all, or can it be done without any sort of impact on the voice box?
When you do precision surgery, the recovery of voice is excellent. But there is another problem in the larynx, in the airway. When the patient is under general anesthetic, the anesthetist put his tube in. It's a plastic tube or rubber tube. Now, if you got a laser beam, which is so hot,
Lasers and plastic don't mix.
if it strikes the plastic tube, there's just not a fly, there's no fire, there's explosion. They got 50% oxygen there. Same thing happens with the rubber tube. And you can't do it without the tube in the anesthetic. So the anesthetist and the surgeon share the airway. And we had to protect the tube. So we used to put aluminum foil around it. It was not really a fidelity because even then there were some minor fires in the and this was a big problem. One day, while having a shower, I looked at the hose and said, why can't the hose be an anesthetic
And
tube?
is that how you discovered it? By looking at your hose shower?
I think-
Am I open?
Or table lamp, with flexible
Yeah.
table lamp. So I went to our physics department. I said, can you get a metal tube, like flexible tube, and make an anesthetic tube? I said, no, we'll find out where to get it from. They couldn't get anywhere in Middlesbrough. But they found a supplier in Sweden. And these flexible metal tubes were supplied to protect the electric cables underground from weathering. So we said, can we have a supply? Say, how many rolls do you want? I said, we don't want 50-meter rolls. We just want short piece. They sent us with compliments. And then he put the correct end, one end, and the other end, made an anesthetic tube. Now this tube is metal, there's no fire,
No fire?
flexible, so it can go in, and it is correct size, correct diameter, everything correct. So we designed a tube. There was an instrument maker in Lancashire. We went him to say, can you make a tube for us? He made tube. We came to a theatre to say, what's involved? The manufacturer came to theatre. I said, okay, we'll make a tube. made a tube, put the tube in, we connected, worked, no fire, no explosion.
And I guess obviously being metal, it has the potential to heat up, but I'm assuming the on time wouldn't be sufficient to cause excessive heating of the metal tube.
Not at all.
No.
Because you never fire on the tube.
No.
You fire on the tissue. So by the time the heat gets to the metal tube, it's gone into tissues. Only trouble is, if it's a plastic tube, then even the spark is enough. Think about a barbecue in summer. A spark is enough to get fire.
That's all right.
That's how it really was wonderful. And then you see, as a surgeon, I could do my job as much as I want, wherever I want, because there is no problem. But then when we put the swabs in, they could catch fire, dry swabs. So we had to put wet swabs in. So the water acted there as a heat sink. So any heat went to the water. So these were the technicalities that we developed.
The thing is that there's so much to consider in a procedure like that, isn't there? So what was your approach? Did you literally sort of risk assess everything right at the start and find out what the potential problems could be and sort of find solution to those? Or was it a bit of, try it and see what sort of came up?
There were no courses, there were no books, nothing at all. I had to teach myself how to use. I'm a surgeon. I was a qualified surgeon. I did surgery for 10, 12 years. There was no problem. It was not surgery I was teaching to myself. It was a tool I was teaching. And this tool is different. It has no feedback. It works at a distance with a beam. And you have to understand the power setting, the exposure time, in order to get the effect of the tissue that you want.
That's right, because as a surgeon, you get feedback in terms of when you're using a knife, you know the depth of penetration. But as you say, with a laser beam, you don't get that feedback.
And then another problem was smoke. Because when you burn the tissue, it smokes. And that smoke will stay in the throat. So you have to have instruments to suck the throat away, the smoke away. Now, we designed instruments with a hollow shaft as a suction and attach the business end like forceps at the end. So the same forceps with the shaft being hollow sucks the smoke out.
Very clever.
So that was another instrument that we had to design. So we designed the instrument. The metal tube was so popular, manufacturer gave it the name. It was called Oswal, Hunton, that's my anesthetist, flexo metallic fireproof anesthetic tube.
Of course, and that's all in this book.
It was, it was.
So there is a QR code for this book, isn't
Yes.
there? So, and at the conference here, people can download a free copy. I think what I love about this autobiography, apart from clearly the unbelievable amount of things that you've managed to achieve, is there are so many photographs in here. You've documented your career so incredibly well. And I think, photographs really bring what you're trying to say to life, because people weren't there with you witnessing these things. But with the amount of photographs in here, you can really see exactly. There's even a photograph of the metal tubes in here, of a little sort of 2-year-old, I think, was it? The first patient was it 8 to 18 months old, where you inserted the tube into. But there's so much in this book, isn't there? Out of all of your career achievements, what would you say is the one achievement that springs to mind that you, when you think about it, makes you smile from ear to ear?
You want to know the highlights of my thing that I remember?
If you had one single one that it really springs to mind.
The single one has to be a recognition by the profession. And that recognition came in 2014 when the Royal College of Surgeons of England invited me and awarded me FRCS England
That's
by
fantastic.
invitation.
And how did you feel?
Great, what can I say? I've always liked to be with it, you know. I
Absolutely.
really enjoyed every part of it.
I'm sure you must have been, you know, behind every man is a great woman.
I always try to do the best, whatever, you know. I want to make people happy, come and enjoy and join.
And did he always sort of discuss things with you at home? Would he jump out the shower and say, "Hey, I've just had an idea for this metal tube"?
No, not like that, but when he did the tube, he came out from the shower, he said, I found something great today. And that was really fantastic, the name of the tube.
That is
I
so-
think
He just
the
came out
thing-
from the, he just said it. Look what I found today, I'm going to do it at hospital. Even
I think you asked me one most important thing I told you, but then the other thing is equally important. The hospital, in recognition of my laser work, gave my name to a suite. Oswald Brian
That's also the book.
in the book. That is unusual for the NHS hospital to name a room after a doctor.
But
That's unusual.
that is testament to
Testimony,
everything that you have achieved. So I have to say, on a personal level, I feel very privileged to be speaking to you today.
And another thing I'll tell you, I have dedicated this book to the people of Cleveland.
Because they raised all the money.
They gave the money, but they trusted me with their money to say, how would I know? We didn't know laser technology, but I don't know, foresight, whatever. I asked them to give the money and produce the goods. This is difficult because it's new technology, you don't know. Sometimes new technology is fashioned today and it's gone away, £40,000 wasted. Hard-earned money.
It's a bit of a leap of faith, isn't
So
it?
I said, this book goes as a dedication to people in Cleveland.
People of Cleveland. Well, look, it's been fantastic speaking to you today. I certainly will be reading more of this book, and I love the photographs. There's even a photograph of you aged 2 in 1936, which is just amazing. But yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your
But
time today.
1960 is a young man there,
I know.
and then the man next to it is never the same person. The coordinator, everything else. And I say, does one have to sacrifice beauty for intelligence?
Well, luckily you have both. But thank you very much. Thank you both of you. It's been
Thank you for
absolutely
interviewing.
fascinating.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Still with things medical, leading surgeons from many parts of Britain and overseas have gathered in Cleveland this week for the country's first conference on a new field of laser surgery. Techniques being pioneered at Middlesbrough's North Riding Infirmary are attracting worldwide interest in the treatment of throat cancer. And it's all been made possible by the generosity of Cleveland people, who raised nearly £70,000 in record time to pay for a revolutionary laser machine. This report from Alan Powell.
The North Riding Infirmary got its new carbon dioxide laser less than 6 months after a public appeal was launched in March of last year. It's been in use for the past 10 months, and in that time more than 100 patients have benefited from a tool that takes surgery into the 21st century.
The surgery is nearly bloodless, bloodless to the extent that there is not a red spot around during the surgery. The recovery from the surgery is very quick. The hospitalization is short. The patient after this kind of surgery can perhaps go home second day, third day. They have gone home second or third day. And this is following a major excision of the tissues in the larynx and on the tongue and the floor of the mouth. Painless. Certainly the surgery is remarkably painless after the operation. The patients hardly need any analgesics, or that's the pain-killing substances, after the operation. So the advances are both for the surgeon and for the patient.
The laser, therefore, is not a cure in itself, but a spectacular use of an intensified light beam to cut away tumours either malignant or benign. The beam can be focused to a fraction of a millimetre, literally evaporating tissue. And the aftermath is almost equally dramatic. A few weeks after the removal of a fairly large growth, only a small scar is visible.
If this tool is new, I think we should find out what exactly it does and what exactly it cannot do. Therefore, the objective of the conference is to discuss and share our experiences with people from the rest of this country or Europe and America. And at the end of the day, I hope that this particular tool will find its rightful place in the armamentarium that we have to deal cases of cancer or any other lesions in the mouth and larynx.
Does this mean that there's some resistance within the medical profession to using it?
Well, there is always a core of people who perhaps don't want to change the ideas. Perhaps they feel that it's a new technology, let me see how it develops. Yes, there's always a core. On the other hand, once they come to a conference, see the results, then perhaps they would want to go home and find, if they could find